Hello, and welcome to Lore Ledger. The goal of this channel is to create literary sleep immersions. We adapt novels into a calm audio experience designed to help you relax, focus, or gently fall asleep. This is not an audiobook, so there is no pressure. You don't need to pay close attention or remember the plot. For our first video, we are covering the first 5 chapters of Lord of the Mysteries. We're curious to hear what you think of this idea, and if you have other novels you'd like to experience in this style. Our doors are always open. A simple like and subscribe would be a small but wonderful reward for our efforts. And now, just relax, listen, and let your mind rest. Tonight, our journey begins. In a quiet room, in a still and sleeping city, a young man named Joe Mingrui was lost in a dazzling, confusing dream, a world filled with faint, echoing murmurs. Suddenly, the dream shattered. It left behind a strange, throbbing pain, a dull ache that seemed to pulse from deep within his head. He tried to move, to sit up, but his body felt impossibly heavy, as if he had lost all control of his limbs. He thought perhaps he was still asleep, caught in that strange place between dreaming and waking. He focused his mind, gathering his will, and finally his eyes opened. His vision was blurry at first, and then it cleared. He was not in his room. He was looking at a study desk made of dark, heavy wood. In the center sat an open notebook, its pages coarse and yellow. To the left, a neat stack of books. To the right, a dark ink bottle, a simple pen, and a brass revolver. A gun. He was confused. The entire room, the desk, the books, the gun, was covered in a strange, faint, crimson veil. The light was coming from the window. He looked up and saw it. High in the black velvet sky, a crimson moon hung in the air, glowing silently, watching the city below. He was inexplicably horrified. He tried to stand, but the pain in his head pulsed, and he fell back into the wooden chair. He took a breath, and then he stood again, this time holding the table for support. He turned slowly and looked around the small room. He saw a low wooden bed, a cabinet with its doors open, a small stove and iron pots in the corner, and across the room, a dressing mirror with 2 long cracks in the glass. With a sweep of his gaze, he saw himself in the mirror. Black hair, brown eyes, a simple linen shirt. The face was not his. This was not him. His mind flashed with a single impossible thought. Could I have transmigrated? He had read about such things, but to have it happen, he took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic in his chest. And as his mind stilled, new memories, not his own, began to flood in. New memories flooded his mind, fragments of a life that was not his. The body's name was Klein Moretti. He lived in Tingen City, in the Lowen Kingdom. He was a recent graduate from the Department of History at Koi University. He remembered a father, a sergeant who had died in a war. He remembered a mother, a devotee of the Evernight goddess, who had passed away the year he started university. And he remembered he had an older brother and a younger sister. Their family was not wealthy. They were supported by his brother, who worked as a clerk. As a history graduate, Klein knew ancient languages, including the Hermes language. The Hermes language. His mind stirred. He reached up and rubbed his throbbing temples. His gaze fell back to the table, back to the open notebook with the coarse, yellow pages. He saw the strange, deep black lettering again. But now, it was no longer strange. It was no longer alien. He could read it. It was written in the Hermes language. The dark ink wrote, "Everyone will die, including me." A chill, deep and sudden, went through him. He instinctively leaned back, pushing away from the desk. He felt weak. He nearly fell, catching himself on the edge of the table. The air in the room felt heavy. He thought he could hear faint, distant murmurings like horror stories from childhood. He shook his head, clearing the illusion. He took a slow, deep breath. His gaze shifted from the notebook and landed on the shimmering brass revolver. A question surfaced. With this family's poor situation, how could they afford a gun? As he thought, he noticed something on the side of the table. A handprint. Its color was deeper than the crimson moonlight. A bloody handprint. He looked down at his own right hand, the one holding the table's edge. His palm, his fingers, were covered in blood. At the same time, the throbbing in his head continued, a dull, incessant ache. Did I smash my head? He wondered. He turned and walked toward the cracked dressing mirror. A few steps later, the figure in the mirror became clear. Black hair, brown eyes, a scholarly air. This was Klein Moretti. This was him. Now, the room was dark. He stepped closer until he was just a step away from the glass. Using the faint crimson moonlight, he turned his head, examining his temple. And in the mirror, he saw it. A grotesque wound. Blood stained the skin around it, and inside, grayish-white brain juices were squirming slowly. He reeled back from the mirror, terrified. The person in the glass did not look like him. It looked like a corpse. How could anyone with such a terrible wound still be alive? He drew a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm himself. He reached out and pressed his left chest. He could feel his heart racing, but it was strong and full of vitality. He touched his skin. Beneath the slight cold, there was a flowing warmth. He was alive. He needed to see the wound more clearly. The crimson moonlight was too dark. A memory fragment flickered. He turned his head and looked at the wall beside the desk. He saw the grayish-white pipes and the metal-gridded lamp. It was a gas lamp. In this time, in this city, a gas lamp was a luxury. His new family was poor. They should have been using candles, but he remembered. His older brother, Benson, had insisted. Years ago, when Klein was studying for university, Benson had wanted to give him the best conditions, even if it meant taking on debt. He convinced the landlord to install the gas pipes, to raise the apartment's standards. Then, he used his job to buy this lamp at nearly cost price. He remembered his brother. He walked to the desk, turned the pipe's valve, and twisted the lamp's switch. A small sputtering sound. A spark. But no light. He twisted it again. Still, nothing. The lamp remained dark. He pressed his temple, searching his memory for the reason. A few seconds later, he remembered. He walked to the other side of the room, toward the strange machine connected to the wall. It was a gas meter. He reached into his trousers pocket and pulled out a coin. It was dark yellow, with a bronze shimmer, a single copper penny. He pushed the coin into the thin, vertical slot on the meter. There was a clink, and then a clang. The sound of grinding gears began. A short, mechanical rhythm. He returned to the desk. He reached out his hand and twisted the gas lamp switch one more time. There was a sharp sound, and a plume of fire ignited. Bright, warm light flooded the lamp, pushing through the glass. The darkness in the room receded. The crimson red retreated back out the window, and for a baffling reason, he felt at ease. He moved quickly back to the dressing mirror. This time, in the bright, warm light, he inspected his temple seriously, missing no detail. He saw that the grotesque wound was no longer bleeding. It looked as though it had already received the best medical care. The grayish-white matter was still squirming, and new flesh was visibly growing around the wound. He realized, with astonishment, that this impossible injury was healing itself. In a few hours, it might only be a light scar. The restorative effects of transmigration, he muttered to himself. He let out a long, slow sigh. Regardless of how or why, he was still alive. His mind settled. He needed to clean up. He opened a drawer, took out a small piece of soap, and grabbed an old, tattered towel from the side of the cupboard. He opened his door and walked into the pitch-black corridor. The crimson moonlight from the window at the end of the hall looked like two monster eyes watching the night. He lightened his footsteps, moving quietly to the communal bathroom. He stood in front of a wash basin and turned the tap. As the water gushed, he remembered a detail about his landlord, Mr. Frankie. The man hated the sound of wasting water and would shout at tenants who let the tap run too loudly. He pushed the thought away and used the moist towel to clean the dried blood from his face. Again and again, he looked in the bathroom's rundown mirror. All that remained was the hideous, healing wound and a very pale face. He returned to his apartment. The wound was too large, and there had been too much blood. He knew his room must still hold signs of what happened. He first wiped the bloody handprint from the desk. Then, using the bright gaslight, he searched the floor. He found a substantial amount of blood splattered beneath the desk, and on the floor, near the wall, he saw a small yellow bullet. A revolver, pointed at the temple, he whispered. The clues clicked together. He now had a rough idea of how the original Klein had died. He carefully wiped away all the bloodstains, cleaning the scene. He picked up the bullet and returned to the desk. He opened the revolver's cylinder. He poured out the rounds. There were 5 live rounds and 1 empty cartridge shell. Indeed, he nodded. He put the rounds back into the cylinder and closed it. His gaze fell again on the notebook and the words, "Everyone will die, including me." So many questions. Where did the gun come from? Was it suicide or a faked suicide? What kind of trouble could a poor history graduate get into? And why did a gunshot to the head leave so little blood and heal so fast? Was it because he had transmigrated at the exact perfect moment? He sat down in the chair, his mind spinning. After confirming his plan to try the ritual, he felt a sense of calm. The fear and unease were swept away, for now he stood up and turned the valve on the pipe, shutting off the gas. He watched the wall lamp gradually dim until its flame extinguished, plunging the room back into the crimson-dyed darkness. He sat back down. He fiddled with the revolver cylinder and pressed the side of his head, slowly recalling Klein's memories like a viewer in a movie theater. Perhaps because of the bullet, Klein's memories were like shattered glass. They were not complete. Many spots were clearly missing. He had no memory of how the revolver appeared. No memory of whether he had committed suicide or if he was killed. He did not know what the words in the notebook meant. Everyone will die, including me. He could not remember if he had participated in anything odd, anything strange. In the days before this, these important memories were not just fragmented, they were missing. Through the window, he silently observed the red moon setting in the west. He watched as the moon sank, and a faint, new light glowed from the east, dyeing the horizon golden. At that moment, he heard a commotion inside the apartment. Soon, the sound of footsteps approached his door. "Melissa is awake," he thought. He knew from Klein's memories that she was always punctual. He felt a strange connection, as though she was really his younger sister. But I do not have a younger sister. He immediately contradicted himself. He heard the doorknob turn. He jolted. He had forgotten. He was still holding the revolver in his hand. This was a semi-regulated item. It would scare her. And what about the wound on his head? As Melissa arrived, he hurriedly pulled open a desk drawer, threw the revolver in, and slammed it shut. What happened? Melissa looked over curiously when she heard the commotion. She was still in the prime of her youth. Her face was thin and slightly pale from a lack of nutritious food, but her skin was lustrous. As her brown eyes looked over, he forcibly composed himself. He quickly checked his temple with his other hand. The texture confirmed it. The wound had already healed. He picked up an item beside his hand to cover the action. A silver vine leaf pocket watch. It was their father's. The most valuable item the Royal Army sergeant had left behind. It was a second-hand item, and it often malfunctioned. Benson, his brother, used to enjoy wearing it to elevate his status, but after it embarrassed him too many times, it was left at home. Strangely, Melissa had a talent for machinery. She had grasped the principles, borrowed tools from her school, and fiddled with the watch. Recently, she had even claimed to have fixed it. He looked at the watch's open cover. The second hand was not moving. He subconsciously twisted the dial to wind it, but after a few turns, there was no sound of a taut spring. The second hand remained still. "It looks like it's broken again," he said, trying to find a topic of conversation. Melissa gave him an expressionless glance. She walked over and took the pocket watch from his hand. She stood there and pulled up the small button sitting atop the watch. With a few simple turns, the tick-tocking of the second hand sounded. He was blank. He thought pulling the button was only for adjusting the time. At that moment, a bell chimed from a faraway cathedral. It chimed 6 times, distant and ethereal. Melissa tilted her head, listening. She pulled the button up once again, turned it to synchronize the time, and then pressed it back down. "It's okay now," she said simply, handing the watch back. He returned an embarrassed, polite smile. Melissa gave her elder brother a piercing stare. It was a look of disparagement and resignation, a look of love for a retarded brother. She turned and walked to the cupboard to get her things, heading for the public bathroom. He lowered his head and chuckled softly. He closed the pocket watch's cover with a click, then opened it again. He sat, clicking the pocket watch open and closed, his mind focused on a new question. Klein had committed suicide with a revolver, without a silencer. The shot should have been loud, yet Melissa, sleeping just one wall away, did not notice it at all. Was she sleeping that soundly? Or was Klein's death shrouded in mystery? To begin with, click, the watch opened. Clack, the watch closed. Melissa returned from the bathroom. She saw her brother's subconscious, repetitive action. Her gaze, once again, glazed with exasperation. "Klein," she said, "take out all the remaining bread. Remember to buy fresh ones today. There's meat and peas too. Your interview is soon. I'll make you mutton stewed with peas." As she spoke, she moved a small stove out from the corner, lit some charcoal, and boiled a pot of hot water. She opened the cupboard's lowest drawer and took out a can of inferior tea leaves, as if it were a treasure. She threw about 10 leaves into the pot, pretending it was real tea. She poured 2 big cups and shared the last 2 pieces of rye bread with him. The bread was unappetizing. There was no sawdust mixed in, but it was hard to eat. He still felt weak, and he was starving. He forced himself to swallow the bread, washing it down with the tea. A few minutes later, Melissa finished eating. She adjusted her black hair and looked at him. "Remember to buy fresh bread, 8 pounds. The weather is hot, so it will spoil easily. Also buy the mutton and peas. Remember to buy them." He recognized the tone. Concern for her dull brother. She even had to repeat it. He nodded with a smile. All right. Melissa did not say anything else. She stood up and tidied the area. She packed the last bit of bread for her own lunch, put on a tattered veil cap their mother had left behind, and picked up a self-sewn bag for her books. It was not Sunday. She had a full day of classes at the Tingen Technical School. It was a 50-minute walk. The public horse carriages cost money, and to save that money, she always left early and walked. She opened the main door, but paused in the doorway. She turned halfway back. Klein, don't buy too much mutton or peas. Benson might come back on Sunday. Oh, and remember we only need 8 pounds of bread. All right, sure thing, he answered, exasperated. He watched his sister close the door and leave. He stood in the quiet room and sighed, his thoughts focused, once again, on the luck enhancement ritual. Sorry, he thought, to this new family. I really wish to return home. He sat in the chair and heard the faraway cathedral bells chime again. 7 o'clock. He stood up and went to the cupboard. He took out his clothes, a black vest, a matching suit, and trousers that clung to his legs. He put them on, and then his halved top hat. He muttered softly to himself, I'm not going for an interview. All I'm doing is buying ingredients. Klein, the former student, had been so concerned about his impending interview that dressing for it had become instinct. He sighed, took off the suit and vest, and switched to a simple brownish-yellow coat and a rounded felt hat. With his outfit done, he walked to the side of the bed and lifted the square cushion. He reached his hand into a small, inconspicuous hole beneath it and found a hidden layer. When he retracted his hand, he held a roll of notes. 8 faded, dark green notes. This was all the savings his brother, Benson, had. It included their living expenses for the next 3 days. He spread a note and caught the faint, unique smell of the ink. The smell of money. He admired the designs. The stern face of King George III, the delicate watermarks. He pulled out 2 one-solely notes, rolled up the rest, and stuffed them back into the hidden layer. He flattened the cloth to hide the hole, then folded the 2 notes and placed them in the left pocket of his jacket, separate from the few pence in his trousers. He took his key and a dark brownish paper bag and walked toward the door. Then he stopped. He frowned. Klein's suicide was strange, full of peculiarities. Would he encounter an accident if he just left? After a moment of deep thought, he returned to his desk and pulled open the drawer. He took out the shimmering, brass revolver. It was the only defensive weapon he could think of. He had never practiced shooting, but just pulling it out would daunt anyone. He felt the cold metal, then stuffed the revolver into the same pocket as his notes. He clasped the money, his fingers pressing against the gun's handle. It was perfectly concealed. He felt more secure. But then, a new worry. Would it misfire? He quickly thought of a solution. He drew the revolver and released the cylinder. He found the one empty chamber, the one from the suicide, and aligned it with the gun's hammer. He clicked the cylinder shut. This way, even if there was a misfire, it would only discharge an empty round. He stuffed the revolver back into his pocket. He kept his left hand in there, one hand on his hat, and pulled open the door. The corridor was dim. Even during the day, limited sunlight shone from the window at the far end. He quickly went down the stairs and left the apartment, taking in the brilliance and warmth of the sun. The streets were awash with filthy water and strewn junk, a common sight in this low-income community. Mobile hawkers shouted along the streets, "Come and try our delicious roasted fish. Hot and fresh oyster soup, fresh fish from the port for just 5 pence apiece. Vegetables freshly plucked from the farms, cheap and fresh." He took in the air, a mix of noxious and fragrant aromas. He clenched the revolver in his left pocket, holding the notes tight. He passed through the busy street, slouching a little. There were bound to be thieves in populated areas, starving children, and men who had lost their jobs. When the crowd thinned, He straightened his back. He saw a vagrant accordionist busking. The melody was pleasant. Beside him, several children in ragged clothes danced to the beat, their faces filled with joy. He overtook a deadpan woman and turned into another street, stopping at Smyron Bakery. The owner was a 70-plus-year-old granny named Wendy Smyron. Her hair was grayish-white, and she always wore a genial smile. He gulped. "Mrs. Smyron, 8 pounds of rye bread." "Oh, dear Klein," Wendy asked smilingly. "Where's Benson? Is he not back?" "In a few more days," he answered vaguely. As she took the bread, she sighed. "He sure is a hard-working lad. All is good now. You have already graduated, a history graduate of Arcoy University. You will soon be able to earn money. You should not be staying in that apartment. At the very least, you should have a bathroom you can call your own." "Mrs. Smyron, you seem to be a young and energetic woman today," he responded with a dry smile. He knew if he passed his interview, his family's life would change. A lecturer at Tingen University would have a weekly salary of 2 gold pounds. His brother, Benson, only earned 1 pound and 10 soldi. It was the difference between a small apartment and a bungalow in the suburbs. But Klein's knowledge was now fragmented. He felt awkward and guilty about Mrs. Smyron's expectations. "No, I have always been this young," she answered humorously. She packed the bread into his paper bag. 9 pence. 9 pence? He asked. "Wasn't it 11 pence 2 days ago? You have to thank the people who protested for the repeal of the Grain Act," she said, with a shrug. He nodded, though his memories of it were incomplete. He carefully took out his notes, afraid he might pull out the revolver, and handed one to Mrs. Smyron. She gave him 3 copper pence in change. He stuffed them into his trouser pocket, took the bag of bread, and headed for the lettuce and meat market across the street. He needed mutton and peas for the stew his sister wanted. At the intersection, there was a municipal square. Tents were erected, and clowns were distributing flyers. "A circus performance tomorrow night?" he read under his breath. Melissa would definitely like it. But how much was the fee? Just as he was about to ask a clown with a red and yellow face, a hoarse woman's voice sounded from beside him. "Would you like to try a divination?" He turned. A woman in a pointed hat and a long black dress stood in front of a small tent. Her face was smeared with paint, and her eyes were a profound grayish blue. "No," he shook his head. He had no spare cash. The woman laughed. "My tarot divination is very accurate." Tarot. He was instantly dumbfounded. The pronunciation was identical to the tarot cards on Earth. He suddenly recalled the origins of tarot in this world. They were invented over 170 years ago by Rosel Gusta. Rosel, the man who invented the steam engine, the man who became Emperor Caesar, the man who also invented fighting the landlord and Texas poker. This could be a transmigration senior. He was suddenly intrigued. He nodded at the woman. "If the price is reasonable, I'll give it a try." The woman laughed. "Sir, you are the first one here today, so it's on the house." "Free?" "Free things cost the most." He decided he would refuse any additional services. He followed the woman, stooping low to enter the tent. The interior was extremely dark. A table covered with paper cards could be seen faintly. The woman sat on the opposite side and lit a candle. The dim yellow light flickered, adding a mysterious feel to the atmosphere. He sat down, his gaze sweeping over the cards. He saw the magician, the emperor, the hanged man. They were familiar. Before he could look at them all, the woman gathered the cards, stacked them, and pushed the deck in front of him. "Shuffle the cards first and cut the deck," she said in a muted voice. "Me? Shuffle?" he asked. "Of course," she smiled. "Everyone's destiny can only be unraveled by themselves. I only serve as a reader of it." He immediately asked, "This reading does not require additional fees, right?" The fortune teller was taken aback. "It's free," she said, muffled. He was relieved. He calmly shuffled and cut the deck. "It's done." The fortune teller clasped the cards. Then she looked up. "I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, but what would you like to ask about?" He did not hesitate. "Past, present, and future." The fortune teller smiled. "Then please reshuffle the deck. You can only truly get the cards you want if you know what you would like to ask about." He sighed. He took the deck back, reshuffled, and cut it again. "There won't be any problems this time, right?" "No problem." She picked a card from the top and placed it on his left. "This card symbolizes your past." She placed the second card in front of him. "This card symbolizes your present." She picked the third card and put it on his right. "This card symbolizes the future." "All right, which card would you like to see first?" she asked, gazing at him. "I'll have a look at the present first," he said. The fortune teller nodded and flipped over the card in the middle. A colorfully dressed character was on the card. He had a stick over his shoulder, with a bindle hanging from it. A puppy followed him. It was numbered 0, the Fool. The fortune teller read, "The Fool? The 0 card? A start? A fresh beginning." Just as the fortune teller was about to speak, the curtains of the tent were suddenly lifted open. Bright sunlight shone in, blinding him. "Why are you impersonating me again?" An angry woman's voice growled. "It's my job to handle the divination. Return to your post. You must remember that you're just an animal trainer." "An animal trainer?" His eyes adjusted. He saw another woman, also in a pointy hat and black dress, but taller. The woman in front of him stood up, disgruntled. "Don't mind this. I just like doing it. But I have to say, my divination can be really accurate." She spoke as she lifted her dress, trotting away from the tent. The real fortune teller looked at him and smiled. "Sir, would you like me to interpret your cards for you?" His lips twitched. He asked sincerely, "Is it free?" "No," she answered. "Then forget it." He pulled his hands back, clutched his revolver, and stooped to exit the tent. He couldn't believe it. He got an animal trainer to be his fortune teller. He put the matter behind him. He spent 7 pence at the market for a pound of mutton and bought some broad beans, cabbage, and potatoes. In total, with the bread, he had spent 2 soldi and 1 pence. There is really not enough to go around for spending. He sighed as he hurried back home. With the staple food, he could now carry out the luck enhancement ritual. After the other tenants on his floor left, he began. He was in no hurry. First, he translated the ritual's phrases, "Blessings stem from the immortal Lord of heaven and earth," into the local Loan language and the ancient Fisak language. If the original chant did not work, he would try these tomorrow. He had to consider the differences between the two worlds. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. After readying everything, he took 4 loaves of rye bread. He placed one in the corner by the stove, one at the bottom of the dress mirror, one on top of the cupboard, and one on the right side of the study table. He took a deep breath and came to the center of the room. He spent a few minutes calming himself. Then, he took a solemn step forward, moving counterclockwise in the shape of a square. With the first step, he chanted in a low whisper, "Blessings stem from the immortal Lord of heaven and earth." The second step, "Blessings stem from the sky, Lord of heaven and earth." The third step, "Blessings stem from the exalted Thearch of heaven and earth." At the fourth step, he chanted, "Blessings stem from the celestial worthy of heaven and earth." He returned to his original spot. He closed his eyes and waited. He felt anticipation, unease, hope, and fear. Could he make it back? His thoughts were swirling. He found it difficult to be calm. It was at this time he felt the surrounding air stop. It became thick and mysterious. Immediately after, a low whisper could be heard beside his ears. It was at times real, at times sharp, at times alluring, at times maniacal. He could not understand the murmuring, but he couldn't help himself. He wanted to listen, to distinguish what it was saying. His head was in pain again, so painful, it felt like a steel drill was stuck into it. His head was going to explode. His thoughts were filled with a psychedelic of colors. He knew something was wrong. He tried to open his eyes, but he couldn't. His body was getting tighter, like it could break apart at any time. A self-mocking thought came to him. If you didn't seek death, you wouldn't die. He could no longer bear it. Just as his mind was about to break, the murmuring faded. His surroundings became very quiet. He felt his body floating. He tried once more to open his eyes. This time, it was easy. A gray fog appeared over his eyes, hazy, vague, and endless. What's with this situation? He looked around, then lowered his head. He was floating at the edge of an endless gray fog. The fog was flowing like water. It was dotted with crimson stars. Some were enormous, others tiny. He reached out his right hand, half confused, half exploring, to try and touch the crimson star nearest to him. He was trying to find a way to leave. When his hand touched the star, it burst into a crimson flame. Dreamlike, he got a fright and retracted his hand in a panic. But he accidentally touched another crimson star. This star burst with a splendid light as well. In turn, he felt his mind empty and his spirit dissipate. In the low-end kingdom's capital, Backland, inside a luxurious villa, Audrey Hall sat in front of a cracked bronze mirror. "Mirror, mirror, awaken," she chanted. "In the name of the Hall family, I command you to awaken." She tried for 10 minutes, then pouted. Father was indeed lying to me. Her voice trailed off. The bronze mirror suddenly glowed with a crimson light, shrouding her completely. In the Sonia Sea, a 3-masted sailboat was navigating a storm. Alger Wilson stood on deck, robed in lightning patterns. He held a quirky-shaped glass bottle. "We're still short on the ghost shark's blood," he murmured. At that moment, a crimson burst appeared in his palm and enveloped his surroundings. In the fog of gray mist, Audrey Hall regained her sight. In horror and confusion, she saw the blurry image of a man, Alger, on the opposite side of her. Immediately after, they both discovered another mysterious person, standing not far from them, shrouded in the gray mist. That mysterious person was Joe Mingroi. He was, similarly, dumbfounded. "Sir, where is this? What are you planning on doing?" Audrey and Alger fell silent, then started speaking in unison.